billion this year. The League of Conservation Voters, a leading climate organization that is among the biggest spenders on progressive causes, announced its plans for backing Joe Biden this morning. Now, this is coming at a moment when his Republican challenger, Donald Trump, is struggling to raise funds. Biden's campaign, independent of the outside groups, expects to raise and spend $2 billion as part of his reelection bid. And six former law enforcement officers who called themselves the Goon Squad face sentencing in Mississippi starting today. Now, this is months after they all pled guilty to federal civil rights offenses for torturing and sexually assaulting two Black men and a third man who has remained anonymous until recently. One of the former officers was sentenced to 20 years in prison. And that same judge, that same district court judge, is expected to sentence the other five former law enforcement officers who admitted to subjecting Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker to numerous acts of racial torture. The organizers behind an honor named for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a lifelong champion of women's rights and liberal causes, canceled the award ceremony scheduled for April after facing blistering criticism from her family and friends over several of this year's planned recipients. Among them were Elon Musk, the tech entrepreneur who frequently lobs tirades at perceived critics, Rupert Murdoch, the tycoon whose empire helped give rise to conservative news media, and even Michael Milken, the financier who has faced nearly 2 years in prison because of corporate greed in the 1980s. And congressional leaders said this morning that they have reached an agreement on the final package of spending legislation to fund the federal government through the fall, though it was unclear whether they would be able to pass it in time to avert at least a brief partial shutdown of the government over the weekend. And in no surprise, former President Trump filed a defamation lawsuit against ABC News, arguing that the anchor George Stephanopoulos harmed his reputation. Okay, by saying multiple times on air that Trump had been found liable for raping E. Jean Carroll. Now, Trump, who often galvanizes his supporters by attacking the press, has filed a string of unsuccessful defamation lawsuits against major media organizations. Federal judges have already dismissed Trump lawsuits against CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. No Labels, you remember that group? They're still looking and hoping to find its dream third party presidential candidate for 2024. But there's a hitch. They keep getting turned down. The deep pocketed centrist group that once envisioned a vigorous public competition to join its ticket, which it planned to put on the ballot in 50 states, has been spun by at least a dozen prominent figures from across the ideological spectrum. And despite planning to have 50 states in the bag by now, they have only been able to gain ballot access in 17 states. Some of the well known individuals who have turned No Labels down include Mark Cuban, Navy Admiral William McRaven, and even folks like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson have said no way. The Supreme Court today rejected a bid by former Donald Trump advisor Peter Navarro to avoid reporting today to a prison to serve his 4-month sentence for defying a congressional subpoena. So Navarro, on his way to prison today, stopped to hold a press conference in a parking lot next to a pizza restaurant and a shopping mall, where he rambled on, blamed everyone, the media, Joe Biden, the Justice Department. He is going to serve those 4 months. He has been processed and will be wearing a prison jersey or jumpsuit very soon. Now, Navarro is an election denier who continues to deny that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time. And I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, to help me break down today's trending and breaking news are Christopher Walton. He is the former chair of the Milwaukee Democratic Party, and Ed Sanders. He is a veteran political analyst. And in hour two, you know what we do? That is that hour where we go deep, where we dig behind those headlines and we bring you those stories that people are talking about, those stories that have captured the nation. Well, today, that story is the story of lynching. Now, we've all heard about the horrific murders that took place in the 1800s and early 1900s, where literally mobs of white folks would go out, find Black people, and lynch them, usually in a public space to send a very clear message to intimidate, to harass, to threaten others, others being Black folks in particular, that if they didn't stay in line and if they didn't follow the orders typically being given by slave owners, or the governing body of a community, that they too would be lynched. Well, today we're going to look at Salisbury, Maryland, the lynchings by local white mobs in that city from 1898 through 1931. Are just an example, a microcosm of what happened in this country. Lynchings happened without trials, without any evidence being presented, without judges or juries. Instead, as I said, these are public executions meted out with unchecked viciousness as men, primarily men, were beaten, were hanged, were shot, were paraded through town, and in some instances, even set on fire. Well, some of the residents of Salisbury, Maryland say that happened in the past. We don't want to revisit it. The city should move on. While others have been working very diligently to force this city, the city council, to vote to apologize to the residents, to engage in repair and atonement. So, we're going to be talking in this hour to a historian about the history of lynching in this country, how atoning for lynching is in some ways tearing communities apart, like Salisbury, tearing apart Black communities and Black folks who have very different views about what we should be doing today to address the lynchings that occurred in some instances decades ago. So make sure you stick around for hour two. One of the experts who has written a book about Salisbury, Maryland, is going to be joining us, plus one of my favorite historians, Dr. David Eichart, is going to be here in hour two. This conversation is so timely since we're talking about reparations on a national level, on a local level, because this ties into, as folks are looking to force cities to atone for lynchings, it ties into this broader conversation we're having about reparations. But before we bring on our guests, I want to talk about a little Black girl joy today. One of the stories that captured my attention today that really resonated with me is the story about Latifah Simon. Now, many of you don't know Latifah, but trust me, in a year or two, you will know her very well. She is an incredibly talented and dynamic woman who won her primary to replace Barbara Lee in the U.S. Congress. Now, Barbara Lee, as you all will remember, ran for U.S. Senate in the state of California. And because she ran for Senate, she gave up her congressional seat. She is a congresswoman from what we call up north in San Francisco. And Barbara Lee not only ran for Senate, unfortunately, she didn't make it into the general election, but she did something really, really incredible that I have a tremendous amount of respect for her for doing. And that is bringing up the bench, investing in younger elected officials like Latifah Simon, and passing the torch on to Latifah. Latifah and soon to be former Congresswoman Barbara Lee have a lot in common. They both were single moms, had got pregnant when they were both teens, not married, had children, had to go back to school to finish their education. Latifah went back, got her bachelor's degree, then went on to get her master's degree. Kamala Harris played a big role in mentoring Latifah. In fact, it was Vice President Harris that told Latifah, go back to school, get your education, you can go far. Latifah was a community organizer. She got married and had a son with her husband. And then her husband, unfortunately, died of cancer. And his illness was so prolonged and so costly, she was left with about $1 million in medical bills. found herself almost homeless, had to rally her community to help her get past that very difficult period. Her daughter, now, who she had as a teen mom, is a lawyer in San Francisco and is helping her raise her son. And it's just one of those feel good stories because Latifah is going to be a dynamic congresswoman. Those lived experience, being a single teen mom, raising her daughter as a single mom, then having a son and watching her husband die of this horrible cancer, and then having to experience financial hardship because of her husband's medical bills. All of these are things that everyday people deal with regularly. So Latifah's going to come to this job with a lot of compassion, with a lot of knowledge, a lot of empathy for the real issues that real people face. I can't wait for November. She has, even though she won an overwhelming, percentages of voting in our state, we still have this two candidate system where you have to move on to the general election. So without doubt, she will be elected in November, and she will go to the U.S. House of Representatives. She will replace Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee is so super ecstatic that someone that she mentored, someone that she has a great deal of faith in, is going to replace her in this seat. So hats off to Barbara Lee for identifying young talent, for pouring into that young talent, and for passing the baton to Latifah Simon. And then kudos to you, Latifah, for overcoming every obstacle that you had to face, coming out victoriously and showing the world that it doesn't matter where you start, as long as you work hard, take care of others, care about your community, pour into your community. That's what people are going to judge you by. So I can't wait to call you Congresswoman Latifah Simon. Stay with us. More of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough.
You're gonna feel a puff of air.
Jong's Optometry has set their sights on staffing up.
Try the next line. Hey, Kim, can you tell our 2 o'clock we're running 15 behind? Sorry, we're a bit backed up today.
He needs an optometric technician to keep an eye on it all.
Where are the dilation drops?
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Psst. Hey, I have a secret. I use Secret Whole Body Deodorant because more than just my armpits stink.
Oh, can I use it where my bra rubs under my...
Oh, yeah.
And what about down there? You know, my...
Totally. 4 out of 5 gynecologists would recommend it. So I tried it, and now I get 72 hours of freshness from my pits to my...
Ooh, I love that it's a spray.
Me too. And it comes in sticks and creams too. Go get your Secret Whole Body Deodorant.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king.
If you're looking for the most epic place on Earth, let's start at the base of a massive waterfall. Then trek through the thick jungle. then climb to the peak of a snowy mountaintop. Then once you get there, keep going. Because with intelligent 4x4 and 7 drive modes in a Nissan Pathfinder, the search is the real adventure.
Available feature. Intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions.
We are back, and helping me break down today's breaking and trending news are Christopher Walton and Ed Sanders. Always my pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. You are both brilliant analysts. And I want to start with this story. It's not a political story, which is what we definitely will spend some time talking about today. But this story out of Mississippi, Chris, is so unbelievable that in this day and age, former law enforcement officers would be engaged in this kind of uh, it's racial targeting for these two men who, the two men, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker. They're black men, but there's a white man who came forward as well who experienced some of the same torture that Michael and Eddie experienced. But this was going on in Mississippi in the 2023,
Mhm.
and it wasn't until they filed their civil lawsuit that the gravity of the torture that they experienced was revealed.
It's it's mind numbing. It is really completely. I don't understand how you can treat people like this. How in the 21st century, as a police officer, as a police officer of color, do you feel it's acceptable to use your power to torture people you're supposed to serve and protect? And this is not just an example of just black police officers. This is police officers across the nation. How do you misuse your badge and hurt people when you're supposed to be protecting and serving them? I don't understand it. I don't get it. There are many things that we need to do to change and reform our police departments nationwide. But Mississippi, of all places, has a long history of police misconduct, especially toward black and brown people. And for it to be people of color doing this is just like, I don't understand it. I don't, where do you get off?
Yeah, I don't know. Ed was. It's hard to just even fathom. Like, there's some section. I mean, they were sexually assaulting these men, and the white man that's come forward too says they rubbed their genitals on his head. I mean, some of the stuff that they did was just unbelievable. One of my friends, after he saw the 20 years that the judge gave the first officer today that was sentenced, he was outraged. The sentencing could have ranged up to 120 years because the conduct is so heinous. What do you make of the 20-year sentence? Do you think that is fair, given that they did plead guilty? They didn't force, the federal courts or the Department of Justice to have to take them through trial. And typically, if you do plead guilty, there are sometimes when your sentence could be, less harsh, less severe than if you went to trial. But what do you think of this 20-year sentence?
It's probably too light. When I think of police misconduct like this, I try to put it in perspective, right? Particularly in the South. I mean, the South, there's just a way of life that we don't talk about enough. We can call them Confederates. You can hear it every Saturday in the fall when they chant SEC for football. In the fight to take down the Confederate flag and the monuments. All of that is perpetuating a way of life that enables officers like what you saw in Mississippi to take the actions they did. We just came out of the George Floyd era, right? And the conversation around police misconduct, and you would hope that that George Floyd's death shined a light on that. But what we know is that the accountability within the judicial system is generally where officers are let off. Even if an officer is accused of misconduct, it rarely goes to trial. And if it does, it is very difficult to convict. And this is just a little bit more. This is just a shade a degree harsher than that. 20 years is probably not enough for the officers because you're not sending a message to other police agencies, particularly in the South, but throughout the country.
Yeah, there's a sadistic nature of this. I'm just going over these facts again. They break into this one man's home. One guy is just visiting his friend. He's like, "Oh my God, I just come to visit someone, and this happens to him." They break into the home of one of these men, and then they put a gun to his head. It's like this mock execution. Accidentally fired a gun at Mr. Jenkins' mouth, causing permanent damage, obviously, to his mouth. Apparently, a white resident called one of the officers to report suspicious activity at this address where the two men were staying with a white woman. They said the officers hit and kicked the two men, poured stuff on them, and forced them to shower together. They say that the officers planted a gun on Mr. Jenkins. You have to wonder, is this all because they got notification that two black men were staying at a house with a white woman? Is that the kind of, again, racial animus that these white officers had towards these two black men simply because they were living in a home or staying in a home with a white woman? It's just, one of the officers apologized during the sentencing. He said, "I don't think I'll ever be the person I was. I'm so sorry. I don't want to get too personal with you, Michael. There's no telling what you've seen. I'm so sorry. I hate myself. I hate that I gave you that. I accept all responsibility." You know what Mr. Parker said, Mr. Eddie Terrell Parker? He stood up in that courtroom and said, "We forgive you."
God's grace is a powerful thing.
Yeah. The judge called the conduct egregious, despicable. He said he sentenced at the top of the guideline range. Obviously, there's still some state charges that are pending. We haven't seen the end of this. Obviously, there's going to be, civil settlements probably. I doubt we'd see a civil trial in a case like this, but it just reminds us of how much work we still have to do and the frustration, as you talked about, Ed. After George Floyd, there was this belief, right, that we were doing all this police training, that there's going to be police reform. And then case after case, we continue to see almost on a weekly basis, police officers engaged in this kind of despicable, intentional, egregious conduct. And even conduct not as obviously this as heinous as this, but still conduct that makes communities, particularly communities of color, less trusting and, quite frankly, afraid to even engage with police. I don't know what it's going to take. Obviously, these kinds of cases cause people to lose whatever trust they may have had in police. We're going to continue to follow this case because hopefully each and every one of these former law enforcement officers receive the maximum sentence available, and there continue to be other prosecutions at the state level because this kind of is just abhorrent on so many levels. Let's talk about this award. Why would this Oppenheimer, I think that's the name of this organization, decide to give an award in the name of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg to, first of all, three men? The award was originally established as a female award to honor women in leadership, and then to give it to these men who represent everything opposite of what RBG stood for. Chris, what do you make of this? I want to make sure I get the name of this organization right, but tell us what you think of that.
I thought that was foolish. Of all the people you're gonna give Elon Musk the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Award? Like, this is a man who literally they had to re-explain to him the Holocaust.
I'm sorry. It's named after the Dwight D. Opperman. It's the Opperman Foundation. I want to correct that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But we had to literally explain to Elon Musk that the Holocaust happened and it was bad. And you're going to give him an award in the name of a Jewish woman who was on the United States Supreme Court? Rupert Murdoch? It seems like there's something going on right now where everybody's just trolling everybody at this point. Like, the conservatives are just trolling things whenever they get their hands on it, they're not trying to actually do anything now, but just poke the bear. That's their only job in life, is just figure out how we can upset the liberals. We're going to own the libs. Grow up. Don't play games with these things. Be good people. It does not cost you a thing to be a nice person.
Yeah, the Opperman Foundation, I don't know. We need to do a little research. Let's check that out, Robert. Are they wealthy, not wealthy? Was this a money play? There had to be something here, Ed. This wasn't just, they had to know that this family would be outraged, that her former clerks would be outraged, that her colleagues would be outraged. So there is something here. I'm not sure if we are getting the entire story, because all of these are obviously quite wealthy people. Martha Stewart was on the list as well. She was one of the females, but there are 2 convicted felons on this list. So what's your gut, Ed, about why this Opperman Foundation would choose these honorees?
You know, it's interesting. I don't know much about the foundation or its founding. You know, I can tell that it was founded by a businessman, and to your point, you know, probably rather well endowed in terms of finances. But, you know, ultimately, it looks like, you know, they have had a series of lectures that included, you know, chief justices and other justices along the Supreme Court. So they play in the legal field as clearly in that regard, but that they also have some interest in technology. Look, in the end game, you would assume that if you put an award in the name of the late justice, that you know, in advancing that award or naming a recipient of that award, that there would be some measure of
or that their lives,
everything out. Yeah.
Their lives mirrored the late justice. Oh, okay. We're going to keep scratching our heads about that one when we come forward. More of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Reva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. A former assistant principal with Columbus, Ohio City Schools is filing a racial discrimination suit against the district. Plaintiff Karen Carey says she was treated differently and excluded from meetings while working at South High School because she is Black. The litigation claims Principal Christy Nickerson forced Carey to work in an office isolated from other administrators. The lawsuit also alleges that Nickerson disciplined Carey during a staff meeting after first asking for her opinion about the 2020 protests surrounding the death of George Floyd. The discrimination went on over a 2-year period beginning in September of 2022, according to court documents. A new study shows roughly 129,000 Chicago children under 6 have been exposed to lead in drinking water. Additionally, the study found 19% of those kids use unfiltered tap water as their primary source of drinking water. Pediatricians also noted that Black and Latino children were much less likely to be tested for lead. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Over on the Sepulveda Pass on the 405 North before Ventura Boulevard, a downed motorcyclist involved accident is on the right shoulder. CHP is now on scene and watch for heavy traffic over 55 minutes from Venice Boulevard. Then traffic stays heavy to Nordhoff. In West LA, 2 cars have been involved in an accident, currently blocking the carpool lane on the 405 south of the 10. Heavy traffic continues from Wilshire Boulevard. Singular crash in Pomona continues to only have the carpool lane open. On the 60 west at Highway 71, Gary Avenue split, and stop traffic continues over an hour from Grove Avenue.
Need to hire? You need Indeed. Their all-in-one platform helps you attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one place. And Indeed's interview tool lets you schedule and conduct virtual interviews right from their website. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
One of the more compelling storylines in the NCAA tournament is coming from Long Beach State. Last Monday, the administration told men's basketball coach Dan Munson he will not be coming back next year. They told Munson he could finish out his 17th season at the school. That conversation happened 2 days before the start of the Big West Conference tournament. With Long Beach State losing their last 5 regular season games, the administration thought it was a good time to inform Munson. Since that conversation, Long Beach State beat UC Riverside, UC Irvine, and UC Davis to win the Big West title and earn the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Long Beach State, a number 15 seed in the West Regional, has a first-round matchup Thursday in Salt Lake City against number 2 Arizona. This is what you call an in-your-face moment for the Long Beach State Administration. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Christopher Walton and Ed Sanders are joining me in this hour as we're breaking down today's trending and breaking news. In hour 2, we're going to be talking about lynchings and how one town in Maryland, Salisbury, that is, has been torn apart because of disagreements about how this town should respond to lynchings which occurred in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I'm going to talk to a historian who has studied the lynchings in Salisbury, has written a book about it, as well as a historian on lynching. So make sure you stick around for hour 2. We did do a little research on the Opperman Foundation. We're trying to find out, who these people are, how well-heeled it might be, who's on the board of directors, et cetera. All those questions that you can usually find answers to when you go to a nonprofit or an organization's website. Well, guess what, Chris and Ed? The Opperman Foundation website is not functioning today. We don't know if this is because the articles are all over, the media about this incredibly stupid decision that somebody made to give these 3 billionaire conservative extremists in some ways, the award that is named after one of our famed social justice, feminists, liberal, justices. So we'll see if the Opperman foundation, how they bounce back, how they decide to go forward. Maybe they'll just remove the name of, Ruth Bader Ginsburg off of this award so they can give it to whomever they please without backlash from her family or the community. But Chris, no labels. They wanted Dwayne The Rock Johnson to be their candidate for president. And even The Rock said, no, thank you. There's a lot of money, but nobody's interested.
Because The Rock can smell what they're cooking, and it's some bull. It is absolutely, no labels is a mess. It's a crock. These are the same people who are literally just trying to get Donald Trump reelected so he can cut their taxes. Nothing else matters to them, but, our taxes are low. Our national security is on fire, but our taxes are low. Women are losing their reproductive freedoms, but taxes are low. We're losing rights here, but taxes are low, so that's all that matters. I'm not trying to hear from these people. They are not a credible electoral force, and they are showing themselves because people from both sides of the aisle are telling them, no, we don't even want your nomination. What politician do you know on earth is going to turn down the nomination to run for president of the United States? I just turned 35. If somehow somebody walked up to me and said, we can give you the nomination, well, maybe not from the Republicans, but we can give you a presidential nomination and have you on the ballot in all 50 states, I'm not turning it down.
That's the operative word you just said there, Chris. Nobody believes they can do that. They said they were going to be on the ballot in all 50 states. So far, they've only gained access to 17 states. I think, as you just said, these politicians they are approaching and these business people, they're smart. Right. They don't want to hitch their wagon to this losing third party presidential ticket.
Right. Especially one that's going to end up take enough votes away, take out the opposition to Donald Trump. See, the thing is, if you notice with all the polls, and then everybody keeps talking about the polls now, Donald Trump keeps hitting 47%. What did he get in 2020? 47%. What did he get in 2016? 47%. Yes, he has coalesced his entire base. He has his 47%. The problem is, there's 53%, the majority of people are still against him. But we're all, well, I like Joe Biden. I'm over here. I like this. We need to bring together the entire coalition, the majority of people, the majority of sane people in the United States, and reelect Joe Biden. We don't need to start going in all different directions and losing focus. We saw what that looks like. We know what that looks like. We got prime examples in 2000 and 2016 of what that looks like by people voting for third party. Joe Biden or Donald Trump is going to be the next president of the United States. You need to pick one of those two.
Yeah, no doubt about that. People just have to live with those choices, stop having these dreams that somehow at the convention, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to give all of their delegates plus all of their money to Gavin Newsom or some other, young, handsome guy is going to run in, ride in on a white horse and save the Democrats from, an older president. But Ed, if Chris is right, and these no labels people are only interested in lower taxes, why don't they just throw their hat in with Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's a leverage thing, right? And to Chris's point, I think it's also a gimmick. And, I think you're starting to see them crop up in different races. The point on this, like if you're trying to legitimately start a third party, there's a lot of work that you got to do. All politics starts local, right? And so you've got to get on the ground in every county across this country and do the organizing to build a base. You're not going to be able to just drop in and add a movie star and now you've got a third party. Politics just doesn't work that way. But
yeah,
in the end,
all for The Rock. Remember when Oprah was going to be president?
Oh yeah, we can go back over a whole list of superstars that were going to be president. I remember Michael Jackson, being named on the ballot. So everyone out there's always some sort of fanciful idea, right? And a lot of people think that's a good idea, but until you get in the race, right? And then you go through the process. It's never as pretty as people think. But,
and one more thing too, we've also seen what this looks like. This whole fantasy of, we're going to bring in a businessman to come in and fix the country. 2 presidents have graduated with master's degrees in business. One was Herbert Hoover. The other was Donald Trump. We've had 2 celebrities become president of the United States. One was Ronald Reagan. One was Donald Trump. In all 3 of these instances, Reagan, Hoover, and Trump, black people have been hurt. Can we just learn our lesson and move forward this time.
Yeah, the movie star thing, we tried that in California with Schwarzenegger, and that whole notion of someone that can, what is it, reach across the aisles. It's not really a Republican, not really a Democratic. Until this country embraces a third party, if we are ever going to, it doesn't work. Because even what we saw in Arnold Schwarzenegger is you don't have a home, you have a base. So if you are a independent, we saw that with Kristen Sinema. Which team are you on? We have two teams in this country in our politics, and you may not like either team, but you don't get to just, as you said, Ed, just create a third team out of thin air and think you can attract, whether it's The Rock or Mark Cuban, another businessman, or even, former, they've asked a lot of former governors and senators, and they even said no, because they realize that you're up against a two-party system, and until we change that, it's really just a grift, a money grab. And I'm really disappointed in some of the people who are associated with it because they know this, that these are very seasoned, very smart, political folks. So these aren't, novices in this game, but there's a lot of money. I mean, let's Joe Biden, 120 million just from the League of Conservation Voters, Ed, that to push up to about $1 billion from outside spending. Biden himself is going to raise $2 billion. I mean, that's why those folks are out there pushing this no labels, or it's a lot of money in politics.
A lot of money. This is an important country. This is there are a lot of votes to be collected, right? I think we imagine 80 million votes gets you the presidency, something like that. And you've got to find ways to get it out. Sadly, it's a money game.
Yeah. What do you make, Chris, of the League of Conservation Voters? And Biden just got another big endorsement. I guess it's Mark Cuban, right? Mark Cuban, talking about Mark Cuban. Didn't he just endorse Biden?
He did. And hopefully that'll be helpful in Texas this year. But the League of Conservation Voters is one of the premier environmental organizations in this country. They aren't going out there fighting for, we want to pour out more oil and we want to pollute the air. They're literally fighting on behalf of, we want environmental justice for the communities of this nation. We want to make sure that we're cleaning up the water and the air is clean to breathe. Things that humans kind of need. This organization is actually going to be doing the right thing, and they're standing with President Biden, who has been an amazing champion for climate change, to fight back against climate change. If you look at the money that this administration has brought forward, if things continue on in the progress that we've made right now under the Biden-Harris administration, pollution rates, carbon will be cut to 40% of what it was back in 2005. This is an administration that is fighting hard and being a moral global leader in the fight against climate change. And, well, the other alternative is Donald Trump.
Well, and juxtapose that against the bloodbath Donald Trump, right? The comment he made over the weekend that there's going to be a bloodbath in this country if he doesn't win. And then that all of a sudden is supposed to be his way of talking about electric vehicles and, Joe Biden blowing up the auto industry, which was, just a total complete fabrication. He wasn't talking about the auto industry, but to your point, you have Joe Biden trying to move the country forward on, climate issues, climate justice, and then Donald Trump holding on, to a bygone era, not, talking about anything that's going to advance the country on the issue of climate. When we come forward, I want to talk about Peter Navarro. And why are these, again, Peter Navarro is a Harvard-trained economist. He has been in politics. He's been a professor at a major university. He has a, by some accounts, stellar resume. But now he is an election denier and he is a convicted felon, all because he is riding with Donald Trump. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. Visit jpmorganchase.com/racial equity and get the tools to help reach your financial goals.
Hey Californians, are you ready to make your home ownership dreams come true? The California Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan Program might be for you. First-generation homebuyers can get down payment and closing cost assistance along with a first mortgage to help you unlock the door of your new home. Applications open in April, so talk to an approved lender to see if you're eligible. Find out more at calhfa.ca.gov/dream or call 877-922-5432. A message from the California Housing Finance Agency.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. 120,000 miles of night drives, daily commutes, and who knows how many.
Are we there yet?
Through countless fixes, elbow grease, and a new radiator, you kept your ride alive. With eBay Motors, you have over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Dia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Dia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Dia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.diachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Peter Navarro turned himself in today to serve 4 months in jail. Now, he was convicted in September on 2 counts of contempt of Congress for failing to testify and provide documents to the House January 6th committee related to Trump's efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Now, he's a former trade advisor, and he was the co-architect of a plan known as the Green Bay Sweep to contest the results in battleground states. He also authored a report making false allegations of widespread voter fraud. He was sentenced to 4 months in prison and a $9,500 fine. In January, he filed an appeal to the appellate court. He lost at the appellate court. He tried to go all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, dude, we need not look at this. You're going to jail. He gave this rambling press conference, Chris, before he went to jail, citing George Washington, still, alleging that he committed no crime, that he had executive privilege. He told the judge even that Donald Trump told him not to turn in the documents. And the judge said, until Donald Trump walks into this courtroom and says that, that's nonsense, which of course Donald Trump would never do that. It was going to be nonsense even if he did say it. It's funny because today Fox News, as he was giving this press conference, they cut away from the press conference like there's nothing here. Dude, you've been convicted. You're just rehashing the same old facts. Why are these people like Peter Navarro? Like I said, Harvard-trained economist, has served in the administration. At one point, did he work under Bill Clinton? I mean, he's been a Democrat as well as a Republican, but he has, some pretty impressive things on his resume. But yet here he is at this age going to jail for Donald Trump, basically trying to support a lie. And, with whether it's Steve Bannon, who's convicted too, who's out awaiting an appeal. He's also been convicted. We know Paul Manafort was convicted and served time. Just kind of the list goes on of these men willing to go to jail and become felons for Donald Trump.
For every situation where the justice system does not work, you have a moment when it does. He belongs exactly where he's sleeping tonight, and I hope he gets his rest for these next 4 months and enjoys his vacation. But when you look at this entire situation, be it Republicans in the federal level, on the state level, I don't understand it. There's no education in the second kick of a mule, and they keep going back and getting kicked by all four legs from this mule. Like Mitch McConnell, this man made fun of you. He made fun of your wife. The Speaker of the House here in Wisconsin, Robin Voss, this man has tried to get you recalled twice because you would not fall in line behind him. And what do? You fall in line. You fold. You fold like a hot towel out of a dryer. I don't understand how do they keep doing this. Like, why? At what point? At what point would you stop? Like, oh my God, it's a mess.
Yeah, you want to give a lot of credit to these grown men, but they're acting like cult, I guess, followers. What do you help us out, Ed? We're just dumbfounded.
I mean, without knowing all of the background on Navarro, I look at this and I say, wow, he must have made a lot of money under the Trump administration, because only a lot of money makes people go to jail willingly for 4 months at a time. I think a lot of people would do a bid, for a 4-month bid for $50 million. But I think one of the questions at hand and that will surface over the next couple months, really a lot of the conversation around January 6th and the overturning of the election, the real question is, where are the handcuffs? Right. I think there are too few people that have been arrested and sentenced. And if 4 months is the sentence that you get for contempt of court and in a treasonous action, then something's really wrong. 4 months is too light. And that sentence needs to be stepped up if we're really talking about, treason and overturning an election.
Well, what's going to be interesting is that Trump has made it clear that on day one, he's going to pardon everyone that's sitting in jail because of January 6th. And there are a lot of Republicans in the Congress and Senate who are not in favor of that, who do not believe that the election was stolen, do not believe there was fraud, believe these people are insurrectionists and that they deserve to be tried, convicted, and now in prison. What do you make of that, Chris? There are a lot of these Republicans, the same ones who are supporting Donald Trump, who also are adamantly opposed to this, opening the jail cells and letting these folks out.
This is a prime example of the inmates taking over the jail and letting the other inmates out. We can't let this man become president of the United States again. We should have never let him become president the first time, but we cannot do this again. And we have an amazing candidate and with an amazing vice president who are out here fighting, who are out here pushing this economy back up the hill from where it was 4 years ago when they had to be shut down because of Donald Trump. They have a president who is fighting for climate change, climate justice, and against climate change. We have a president that's fighting for economic justice. We have a president that's actually standing for healthcare, rebuilding America, fighting for equality.
No doubt about it. And you have to juxtapose that against Donald Trump, who literally right now is fighting for his financial life. Right. He cannot come up with a bond for that $454 million civil judgment that Letitia James in New York got against him. He's got about a week left. He's already said 30, 40 of the biggest insurance companies in the world will not give him that bond. If he doesn't come up with that money, the Letitia James that we know that got this conviction and got this civil judgment is going after his assets in the state of New York. She's going to start seizing properties. The only thing left for Trump in about a week, Ed, is going to be bankruptcy. And we know he's not above filing. So not only might he be asking those 70 million people to vote for someone who has 91 criminal charges against him, he's going to be asking his voters likely to be voting for someone who is in bankruptcy. Never, ever has a president or anyone run for office while they literally are having their assets overseen by a bankruptcy judge. But that's going to be the only option to try to stave off the collection efforts of Letitia James.
Yeah, Donald Trump is in an interesting place. I mean, Listen, I can't imagine any insurance agency or funder coming in and issuing a bond to a current presidential candidate. That's got to violate all kind of campaign contribution laws. But, you know, and that may be part of his response. I mean, ultimately, what you lay out are just a whole host of troublesome actions and scenarios that this president finds himself in. And, you know, a lot of us believe that he's running for president just so that he can clean the plate of all of his troubles, his legal troubles. And, you know, sadly, I think he's going to put that to the test if he's able to win the presidency.
Right.
You know, and everybody's scratching their head saying, oh, but I thought he was a billionaire. Where's all that money? And what we're learning is the cash, the $350 million he's supposed to have liquid, doesn't exist. And these properties, many of which have inflated value, you know, he'd have to liquidate them, and there's not time. Letitia's not going to give him time to sell those properties. She will take them off his hands and she will sell them for him. It's really unbelievable that somebody would even be running for president with the kind of financial woes that he's facing, kind of criminal jeopardy that he's facing, the civil cases. There's still big lawsuits pending against him. Eric Swalwell, our congressman in California, has a lawsuit that the court says can move forward about January 6th. So the civil judgments, they're not over. They're going to keep coming. So think about someone being compromised, who, you know, would be a perfect target for, you know, a foreign agent to come in to bribe. That's Donald Trump. If you look up, you know, the most vulnerable person in our country right now, if you look that up in the dictionary, it's going to be his face, because that's who he is in this moment. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Ed. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. When we come forward in hour 2, we're going to be talking about lynchings in this country. How do we atone for them? And why are Black people divided over what the solution is? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.